Please.
Indeed, we got a very important amount of amendments, and I would like to thank my shadow rapporteurs for their intensive work. This seems a very promising joint work in the committee, and rightly so, because I would like to start by underlining the importance of this report in the present context we have in the European Union. As everybody knows, in order to deal with the situation created by overlapping crises and by Brexit, it was decided to adopt a roadmap for the future of the European Union, which will be very likely defined in a summit to take place in Rome in March. The European Commission, as you know, is already adopting its plans to cope with this situation, and that's why the promised white paper to be presented by the European Commission will be addressing the future of the European Union as a whole. But we also know that the European Pillar of Social Rights will be addressed in the context of this roadmap. So that's why our work is so important. And that's why we should make an effort. I know this is not easy because this means to work with a very tight schedule. We should make an effort to adopt our report in the Employment Committee in December in such a way that the Parliament can adopt it in January. Like that, the European Parliament will become a central actor of this process, will be in conditions to present its report in the big conference to be organized by the European Commission by the end of January, and like that, our ideas can be included in the roadmap for the future of the European Union to be adopted in Rome. So I count on all of you, shadows and committee members, to deliver with such a tight schedule. I would like to use this opportunity also to make some clarifications when it comes to the scope of the report. I'm really assuming that the European Pillar of Social Rights should be there to define better working conditions for all members of the European Union. Let me make it clear. Even if, naturally, Eurozone members will need some specifications, but the report as a whole should address the European Union as a whole. The second point of clarification I'd like to make is that if you want to have a credible report, we need to make an effort to update social standards in face of the new challenges, such as globalization or the digital revolution. But we also need to make sure that we identify the necessary means and instruments to deliver on these required social standards. So this should be included in our report. Now, building on my own contributions and all the other contributions coming from the other groups, I would just like to identify some issues where I consider we should make a particular effort to update social standards. The first one is to make sure that all workers in Europe, they can count on fair working conditions, whatever their forms of employment, whatever the jobs they have, whatever the sectors, the regions they are in. I'm calling for a particular directive with this purpose. Secondly, is to make sure that all workers in Europe have access to an inclusive social protection system addressing the main social risks. The third is to address the issue of wage developments in such a way that we can really tackle the problem of the working poor. Europe should not be a continent for working poor. The third is also to tackle the sources of poverty. And that's why I'm calling for a European framework on minimum income schemes, because all member states should count on these schemes. I also consider that we need to make a serious work to address the situation in children in Europe. That's why we are calling for a child guarantee and for a serious development of childcare services. And these should enable us also to address the issues of work-life balance. So this is my sixth central concern, to be completed then on a big push for something which is also in the agenda for later on, is the skills guarantee, to make sure that all workers, they can really update their skills in order to move to quality jobs. But all these updated social standards will not be really easy to deliver if we don't ensure the necessary means. And that's why I'm calling for using the European semester to turn it into a real process, not only of economic governance, but of social governance, identifying the major imbalances, not only economic but social imbalances, in such a way that when we have a major social imbalance, let me give an example, a member state which doesn't have the means to invest in education, then we should ensure these means. And the solutions, I think, are in our hands, are first of all to include a silver rule for education investment in our national budgets. The second one is to make sure that the investment fund and the European Investment Fund will address the needs of education and training. And the final one is to make sure that in the Eurozone we can count on instruments of fiscal capacity complementing what can no longer be provided by national budgets because they are confined by a common fiscal discipline. So in a nutshell, these are the key issues I'd like to address in the final version of the report, and I count on my colleagues for a fruitful discussion, a frank discussion. I will be very open to your ideas. I just would like to make sure that we'll come up with a strong and credible report. Thank you very much, Chairman.